Sardine. Table salt. Kosher. Himalayan.
Rock salt?
Sea salt.
Yeah, sea salt. Well, I read a couple books and a lot of articles, and I found 32 different kinds of salt. You want to pass it down? Now, the reason why there can be such a large variety is the definition of salt is actually an ionic bond that completely dissolve in water into the positive and negative ions. This ionic bond is why salt is considered rough, rocky, and so on. And from this, you can have such a large variety across the world. Next slide. So why did I choose salt? Well, last year in this stats class, we read a book called A Bunch of Captains. The main character was a genius. He knew almost everything. It was very impressive. But in one of his tangents, he talked about how salt has made a big influence in the world, and this drew my attention. So I started reading a couple articles. At the same time in that class, we started learning about our excellent practice. And I thought, 2 birds, 1 stone. I can knock them both out. And so through my research, next slide. Through my research, I conclude that salt, through time, has been a momentous variable in human development, culture, and through other historical events. Next slide. So to begin, the earliest dating I found of salt was with domesticating animals. Today we have pigs, cows, sheep, chickens being produced so we can have them at our dinner tables today. Now, hunter-gatherers after the agricultural revolution, they sat down, but they did not want to lose their hunting ways. And so they continued to hunt in their areas, and thus the population of such animals began to diminish. In order to keep having meat on a ready supply, they used salt to draw animals into an enclosed area, hopefully a male and female, and have these animals reproduce. Now they have another food source, and they don't need to hunt. So the first animals that they used for mass production in terms of having food was because of salt. Another strong property of salt that is evident through across the world is as preservative. The earliest again dating is in China. China's very geography, there's a lot of mountains, it's cold, the winters are harsh, so there's a very short growing season in terms of vegetables. How do you survive through winter? Well, the Chinese began to stuff vegetables inside jars and add a brine, which is basically water with a really high concentration of salt inside of it. And this would react with the lipids, proteins, and acids in vegetables to keep it preserved. These can last months at a time. And thus China was able to have a food source without the winter. Another place for salt to preserve is in England. It's a coastal country. I believe that if you stay in the middle of England, you're nowhere further than 200 miles away from the sea, wherever you are. And so they depended on the sea. They found their food sources through fish. It was a major food source for them. Now, when you go on a fishing excursion, the food will spoil. So they can only go out for days at a time, usually 1 or 2. You come back and you transport your catch to the markets. The solution to help make fishing more efficient was to bring in these giant boxes of salt. And they put in the cargo holds. You go out further than you could, now you have more time. You catch a fish, clean it, gut it, throw the remains into the ocean, and now you have this large slab of meat. You put it in the salt containers, and you leave it in. These meats can last up to a week to a week and a half. So now, fishermen are allowed to sail longer in areas that there's a high population of fish and find a better catch. This, going back to England, helped the local markets have a better supply, making food cheaper, allowing more people to eat, which helped build England's foundation. Another civilization that was helped by salt were the Venetians, Venice. Now, what's interesting about the Venetians is that they don't have much land around them. So they use salt as a way to regulate for the rest of the Mediterranean. They gave great subsidies for really good deals of prices, and merchants come to the Venetians first and trade in return for money and other currencies. They have the surplus of salt now with them, and the way they utilize it is they go to the rest of the Mediterranean, like Greece, Egypt, you have Spain, and they trade with them for more resources. Venice built themselves upon their salt trade. And today, if you look at Venice, it's actually being swallowed by the sea. I find very ironic that the same thing that they built themselves off, the sea, is what's swallowed them today. The only thing that can help them. Next slide. In terms of culture, the earliest form are the Egyptians. They practiced mummification in their religion, where they preserved their bodies for the afterlife. The tool they used to keep the body preserved until they wrapped it up would be natron, another form of salt. Now the natron would cover the entire body carcass. It would dry out the body so that the priests could perform the rituals, and they could wait a certain amount of time they needed in order to stay, or for the body to decompose. In terms of the organs, brain, and other parts of the body that they kept in jars, they used the same brine to keep these preserved until they entered the tomb. Interesting enough, staying with top religion, we have salt references throughout our own scripture in the Bible. To begin in Matthew chapter 13, verse 5, "You are the salt of the earth, but if salt has lost its taste, how can its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything, but is being thrown out and trampled." At this time, Matthew's trying to set the people he was writing to straight, because it was the first scripture that they were reading in terms of God. And so he used salt, because at that time, they knew about it. They knew of its preservative properties. They knew of its purity. And they associated with holiness. So he's comparing God's people to salt, as in, you're God's people, you're holy. But if you stray away from God, you lose your taste, you lose your saltiness, you lose what you need to do, unless God will forget about you. In 2 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 5, "Do you know the Lord, the God of Israel, has given David kingship over Israel forever, to whom and his sons by covenant of salt?" This again reference back to the preservative properties of salt. The covenant was supposed to represent it's going to last forever for David, and thus they used salt as their metaphor to connect to the people. In Rome, it was a warring nation, and thus they required people to come and fight for Rome. Can anyone tell me where the term salary comes from? Good guess. That's right. So salary originates from the Latin term salarium, or in English, salt money. The Romans would compensate their soldiers with salt payments, since they would then go home, trade in local markets, and thus they'd be able to thrive and serve as their form of money for the army. Beyond Rome, in China, as Marco Polo talks about in his travels, a bowl of salt was equal to 2 peaches, another form of China's currency. Williams talks about how the European settlers, when they went to Africa, they noted that even though they were primitive, they're still using salt as a currency. So I would argue that salt was one of the first universal currencies and allows nations to come together and trade with each other because it can be seen across the world. Now, directly in events, salt has 2 very important places. The Civil War is one of the darkest times in America's history. And its use there was that it was used to ferment leather. Now, the Southerners relied heavily on their salt mines in order to build saddles that were on horses. These horses would help supply the army, it would keep them strong. Once the Union pushed back and took these salt mines, they actually, once they took these salt mines, they were kind of the knees, the Confederates. They were hurt, they couldn't produce more leather, they couldn't supply their horses. If all was damaged, it was unreplaceable, and thus the Confederates were at a disadvantage compared to the North, who had abundance of salt. The North won the war. Part is because in the South, once they were getting pushed back by the Union, they couldn't come back and they couldn't hold their ground. Part of this was their supply lines were. Salt helped shape the country today to help to keep us unionized and together as well. On a more peaceful side, in the 1930s, 1940s, England held a colony called India. In India, the English held a strong tax on salt. Now, salt's been used by everyone, as we use today, and thus it's very surplus. Now, the fact that the English were taxing is kind of like the British tea that we can relate to, and that it was unavoidable. The taxes were heavy, they were high, and thus people were greatly hurt by it in terms of how much money they had in their pocket. Gandhi was a major political influence in his time, and he organized a salt march. He organized a group of people. They met at the northern point of India, and they would walk all the way down hundreds of miles to the sea to the south and gather their own salt. Many people joined them along the way. Many people left them. But the point was it gained international coverage. Why would you walk so far for something that we have advantage of today? Well, it's because of how unfair the English were about it. The rest of the world saw this now. England was now pressured by other international countries to free India. In 1947, that just happened. India gained their independence and salt played a factor. Next slide, please. So what does this mean for you? You may not think of it, but salt still has a high prevalence in our society. It's on our tables, it's at restaurants, it's used to de-ice roads, it's in canned foods, it's used as preservative still. The main point of my project is trying to bring to light that even the smallest things make a big difference. If salt was not in our society, during the winter, especially in Chicago, when our roads get really ice covered, when unable to do it, emergency vehicles would get past, food would not be able to transport to the city. You couldn't function, society would have to freeze, but salt helps us function, helps us keep going. Why actually use salt as a cornerstone of past and present? Well, as you can see from our first early slides, really, human development in the earliest age were built on salt. Salt helped us advance as a race. It helped us come forward out of our shoes and help survive. And thus it built up the early foundations. I would argue that the human temple is still being built today. It will keep being built until our last days. A cornerstone is symbolic and it's the first thing that's put down. It's the first steps to something great. And thus salt has helped us become great. It helps us function today. So everything that the human race does, everything that we accomplish, was started with salt. It's what helped build